Hello my friends, in today's video we will take a look at the comparison of DJI Action 2 and DJI Pocket 2. Both devices represent a unique camera concept. They are very different though, so instead of comparing them directly, I will focus more on explaining use cases and situations where one camera is more suitable than the other. We will also take a look at the general performance of Pocket 2 and Action 2, and I will try to help you decide which one is more suitable for you. As you can see, the construction of Pocket and Action is very different, but there are also some similarities. For example, both cameras are able to pack relatively large 1/1.7-inch sensor in a very small body. With the Action 2, it is housed in a main unit which is incredibly tiny. The main module contains all of the usual components except for the SD card and USB-C port, which is located on the display or power module. Pocket 2 has the lens and sensor mounted on a tiny gimbal. The gimbal is mounted on a handle with the controls, display, battery and all other components. A very positive similarity is that both have incredible size-to-performance ratio, which is probably the main priority with both. It seems that the image quality and the compact size are two areas where DJI is not willing to make sacrifices even if it means compromises in other areas. The build quality is better on the Action 2. It has very high quality full metal frame and it is by far the most premium feeling action camera on the market. An issue of sorts may be that it is actually too nice for reckless action camera use, so I will be getting some protective gear as soon as possible. DJI Pocket 2 is mostly made of plastics, only the gimbal is metal, but it is fine and in my experience more durable than I have expected. The type of footage that you can get with both cameras is very different. Pocket 2 uses a 20mm equivalent lens in combination with a pretty large 1/1.7-inch sensor. It is quite neutral focal length, suitable for all-round use. You can use it for landscapes, people, travel stuff, and also for vlogging. In comparison to action cameras, it produces more naturally looking footage. It is still very wide angle, but it already doesn't have that action camera look, which is an advantage for me personally. Action 2 uses an extremely wide lens with 155 degrees field of view. That is a 12.7mm full-frame equivalent, so I was actually worried that it would be too wide. It is much wider than Pocket 2 or even GoPro Hero 10, but it isn't too wide for all-round use, so it is fine. This focal length is very suitable for POV filming of any kind, for mounted use, or just for situations where you want to fit as much as possible in the frame. Regarding the pure image quality, that is better on Pocket 2. The main reason for that is just the focal length. 20mm lenses are much easier to make at certain level of optical quality in comparison to extremely wide lenses such as the one on Action 2. Pocket 2 captures more real detail and it looks more natural. Action 2 still provides excellent image quality for what it is. It captures plenty of detail for an action camera. A huge strength of Action 2 over the Hero 10 or 1R is the dewarping. That means that you will not get warped concave lives on the edges of the frame. That is perfectly corrected on Action 2. Pocket 2 is probably naturally rectilinear, so it is not an issue on Pocket 2 either. A very valid option is to use a wide-angle lens with Pocket 2, which provides 15mm full-frame equivalent focal length with very good image quality. Anamorphic lens for Pocket 2 is also available, video about that will be in the description. Also worth mentioning is that with the Action 2 you will get the same image quality in all frame rates including 120p. With Pocket 2 you will get slightly worse image quality in 60p, so I recommend using 24 or 25p unless you need a higher frame rate for slow motion. Another difference is that the Pocket 2 uses a 64MP sensor, whereas the Action 2 uses a 12MP sensor. Video processing on Pocket 2 is excellent, so pixel binning doesn't have any negative effects on the image quality. An advantage is that it allows the Pocket 2 to have sensor cropping zoom, which is usable even at 2x, since it is still 4K readout and you are just losing downsampling rate. Action 2 has just a normal digital zoom, which isn't really worth using. The colors on both are very similar, which is a good thing in my opinion. DJI colors remind me a little bit of Blackmagic. The blues have a slight teal tint and the orange is usually highly saturated, but it works very well in my opinion. The colors are not too much off and importantly they are consistent, so I am very happy with the color reproduction on both. Dynamic range on Action 2 was significantly improved by the firmware update and now it shows much more shadow detail. Dynamic range is still better on Pocket 2, which is the best small camera in this regard. The low light performance is also much better on the Pocket 2. Sensor size is the same, but the lens on Pocket 2 lets in more than twice as much light. Pocket 2 is also by far the best low light camera among Pocket and Action cameras. The low light performance of Action 2 is also very good though. It is a level above the GoPro, for example. An obvious difference is the method of stabilization. I have explained that many times in the past, so here I will just briefly summarize the differences. Gimbal on Pocket 2 is a more versatile method of stabilization. It offers 4 stabilization modes. Those are the tilt lock mode, follow mode, all follow mode, and POV mode. A big advantage of gimbal is that it can keep the horizon perfectly leveled, which always makes the footage look more classy. It can also be used for special modes such as panorama photography, object tracking, moving time-lapses, and so on. Another advantage of the Pocket is that you can control the gimbal remotely, so you can basically compose the shot using the smartphone app. A weakness of any 3-axis gimbal is the walking, since it can't stabilize up and down movement. Pocket 2 has a wide field of view, which makes the stabilization easier, and even the walking looks very decent with Pocket 2. Action 2 uses Rocksteady 2.0, which is a digital stabilization. It is one of the best on the market, and it is basically on par with Hero 10 and One R. It is very efficient, and it can basically replace a gimbal in most use cases. An advantage of digital stabilization is that it doesn't require any fragile parts, so it allows the camera to be very durable. A weakness of digital stabilization is usually the effectiveness in the low light. Action 2 does really well in this regard though. It won't fall apart even in very low light, although it may be less effective in more difficult situations. The gimbal on Pocket 2 doesn't care about the low light, so it always performs the same. I think that both methods of stabilization are a good choice for respective field of view. It is not really possible to compare the stabilization effectivity in absolute terms, but I can say that it is really good on both. Another difference is that the Action 2 uses fixed focus, so basically everything is in focus all the time. On the other hand, Pocket 2 has longer focal length and wider aperture, so it still needs to use autofocus. The autofocus on Pocket 2 uses both phase detection and contrast detection points, and it is very good. The depth of field is quite deep on Pocket 2, so it has pretty easy job. Overall, the autofocus is very good on Pocket 2, so I have no complaints. Despite that the Action 2 uses a pretty large sensor, the minimum focus distance is still 30 cm, so it is fine for close-up shots or vlogging. Fixed focus is still more suitable for POV action shooting because it doesn't do anything and it obviously can't fail. Regarding the stills, Pocket 2 can shoot very impressive 64 megapixel JPEGs or RAWs. The image quality with these is again the best among compact consumer cameras. These are very detailed and the RAWs capture a lot of dynamic range. Action 2 can shoot surprisingly nice 12 megapixel stills. The amount of detail is pretty good and the sharpening is very well judged in the stills, so I am very happy in this regard. It can also shoot RAWs with solid amount of information thanks to that relatively large sensor. The main compromise of Pocket 2's form factor is the 1.08-inch screen. You will mostly be able to use it for composing your shots and maybe adjusting exposure. Brightness and sharpness is okay, so even though you won't be able to check the focus, it is okay for intended purposes. Of course, you can always connect it to your smartphone if you need a larger screen. Action 2 uses OLED 1.76-inch screens. The resolution is 350 ppi, so it is super clear despite the size. It is an OLED screen, which means that the contrast is very high and it looks great. Visibility of the darker parts of the frame was improved by firmware update. The display on the display module is the same. The user interface is really good on both. It uses the usual swipe from the edge gestures, which works well on this type of device. All of the settings are quite easy to access, you just need to take a couple of minutes to figure it out. Pocket 2 has more physical buttons, which makes it easier to access gimbal-specific functions. Action 2 only has one button, but it seems to be enough thanks to long press and double press functionality, so I haven't found that to be a major issue in practical use. Both cameras use integrated battery, which is in my opinion a very acceptable compromise to achieve the specific form factor of both devices. Pocket 2 uses an 875 mAh non-removable battery. Pocket 2 uses an 875 mAh battery. I was able to get 118 minutes of recording on a single charge at 4K 25p and highest quality. Action 2 has 580 mAh battery in the main unit, which will realistically last about 50 minutes of 4K 20p video recording with Rocksteady and H.264. Display and power module include larger 1300 mAh battery. You can get about 100 minutes of 4K 25p recording with the display module attached. The battery life is really good on both, so I have no complaints in that regard. There has been some overheating drama with Action 2, but I haven't experienced that at all. I did another 80-minute continuous recording test at 22 degrees Celsius with both devices shooting high bitrate 4K video. Action 2 was warm, but it was nowhere near as hot as the GoPro Hero 10 with release firmware after just 20 minutes. I have never had any overheating issues with Pocket 2, not even during the summer at 35 degrees centigrade. DJI Pocket 2 has a great selection of accessories, I have also made a video about that and it will be linked in the description. Action 2 accessories are not available yet, although DJI has announced some very interesting accessories. I think that it has a lot of potential thanks to that magnetic connector. If you follow this channel, you probably know that I am a big fan of DJI Pocket 2. The combination of pocket size, gimbal, 20mm equivalent focal length and excellent 4K video quality just works. I like the Action 2 almost as much as I like the Pocket 2, which is a very high praise from me, but it is a little bit misunderstood concept, much like the original Osmo Pocket back in 2018. Some people want the SD card slot and charging port on the main unit, removable battery and so on, which is completely fine because they can already have all of that with GoPro Hero 10. Action 2 is meant for those who can take advantage of that very small form factor and versatility. Deciding between Pocket 2 and Action 2 is pretty simple. DJI Pocket 2 is a better device for handheld use, vlogging and sort of point-and-shoot type of usage. Action 2 is more suitable for mounted use, POV shooting and wearable use, although it is still a very good vlogging camera. This conclusion is similar to Pocket 2 versus Hero 10, but Pocket 2 and Action 2 are further apart due to the field of view and form factor. That also makes them a great two-camera setup for traveling and content creation. Both Pocket 2 and Action 2 are out-of-the-box concepts that won't suit everyone, but they can provide very unique creative options and feature sets. If you can take advantage of those creative options, I can highly recommend both Pocket 2 and Action 2. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section and see you next time.